Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Haunt Collection podcast. My name is Chris Codina. I am your host, and this week we'll be talking about Curious Little Thing by Kris Straub. You may know Kris Straub as the author of Candle Cove, a very famous creepypasta, one of my favorites, and we'll probably cover it down the line. But I want to talk about Curious Little Thing first. Both this and Candle Cove were part of a horror short story collection that Kris Straub put out called Iker Falls, A Visitor's Guide, that came out in 2009, and it's since been released for free. He has it posted on his chainsawsuit.com website. Down the line, I might cover the other stories in Iker Falls, but we'll see. That's a bit ways to go there. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started on Curious Little Thing and see what we think about it. I have an odd habit a friend recently picked up on, a habit I developed about a year ago. He noticed that when I enter a room, any room, and shut the door, I turn my face away from it and close my eyes until I hear the lock click. Only after the door is fully closed will I open them. He gave me a hard time about it until I told him where it started. This little intro here, it's an interesting concept. Like, you know how, like, when you read a horror story, so you kind of, you know what's something hopefully creepy is going to happen, so that we get set up that our narrator has a habit that involves him looking away when he closes the door. That's kind of interesting on its own, but when you know that it's in the context of a horror story, that kind of, like, piques your interest a little bit more, perhaps. It does mine, at least. And it makes me kind of want to know and see, what exactly happened in the horror sense, in the creepy sense, that made it so that this guy doesn't like to look at the door while he's closing it. Let's find out, shall we? I work for a water seal company in St. Paul. We produce sealant for exposed wood, decks, boats, that kind of thing. You hear about sealant being a dirty word in the Ashland, Iker Falls, Ironton area, but not all those companies were part of the infamous quote-unquote Ethelor summer that wiped out the local economy in the 50s. I got sent to an industrial park outside of Iker Falls on business. Real quick, the Ethelor summer that it refers to in the first entry in the Iker Falls collection is a history of the area. And what the Ethelor Summer was, it was a point where a bunch of sealant plants kind of built up in Iker Falls to treat the lumber there because the lumber wasn't suited for building larger structures like houses because the area is very moist because of the eponymous waterfall. So these companies came in and treated the wood with a chemical so that they would be more sturdy and they wouldn't rot away because of the moisture in the air. But, of course, the sealant was not safe for humans, and a bunch of people got sick and eventually died from various diseases like cancer. So that is what it's referring to when it says the Ethelor Summer. Continuing. I checked into this dismal hotel, the Hotel Umbra, that looked like the decor hadn't been changed since 1930. The lobby wallpaper had gone yellow from decades of cigarette smoke, and everything had a fine layer of dust, including the old man behind the front desk. I hoped that the room would be in better shape. Mine was on the 4th floor. It's a nice little description of the hotel, the yellow wallpaper from cigarette smoke. And I don't know if that's a reference to the Yellow Wallpaper story, which is another one we might cover. I don't really have any other thoughts on that. Just when you hear the words Yellow Wallpaper together, you kind of think of something. But the funny line about the layer of dust covering everything, including the guy behind the desk, that's funny. The name Hotel Umbra, I like it in its own way, but also maybe it's a little on the nose. But maybe that's actually fine. It might be, a little bit of humor. Umbra is basically shade, shadow. I can't really imagine a hotel actually called the Hotel Umbra. I could be wrong. There could be a whole chain of them, and I don't even know, and I'm not going to Google it right now. We'll find out afterwards. But yeah, it's kind of funny that it's so, like, the Hotel Shadow. It's funny, but it's not the worst. It's just, it sticks out to me that it's so on the nose. Being an old place, the hotel had a rickety cable elevator, the kind with the double sets of doors, one of those flexing metal gates, and a solid outer pair of doors. I shut the gate and latched it, and pressed the tiny black button for my floor. Just as the outer elevator doors were about to close, I was startled by the face of a young woman rushing at the gap between them. She was too late. The doors shut, and after a moment the elevator ascended. I thought nothing of it until I needed to take the elevator back down for one of my bags. I entered, pushed the button for the lobby, and pressed my tired back to the elevator wall opposite the doors. They had nearly completely shut when again I was surprised by a woman's face moving towards the gap, staring into the elevator through the gate. Too late to place her hand in to stop the doors from closing. This time I sprang forward and held the door open button, and after a moment the doors lurched and slid open. I waited a moment. From the opening I could see partly down the hallway. No one in sight. Still holding the button down, I slid open the metal gate and craned my head into the hallway to look down the other direction. No one. No trace of the girl. No recently shut hotel room. No footsteps. No jingle of keys. I released the button, but did not lean back against the wall. I stood directly in front of where the gap in the doors would be, in the center of the elevator. After a pause, the outer doors began to slide shut, to move towards each other until the space between them was the width of a young girl's face. In that quarter second, several fingertips appeared, followed immediately by her face again, rushing from around the corner, staring at me as the doors met. I had been watching the gap where I thought she might be, so I saw her. She was about 13 years old, and very plain, almost homely, with a pale complexion and neck-length dark brown hair that looked mussed or slightly dirty. I didn't have time to glance down her visible shoulder to see what she was wearing. From her behavior, I wondered if she was a runaway or homeless person who had gotten into the building. She had a glassy, blank expression, tinged with a little desperation, some distant desire or need, a look that could be easily accompanied by the words, "Please, help." This is interesting. So obviously we have kind of the issue with the closing door. We see it already. But our narrator keeps seeing this girl pop up as the elevator doors shut. She just peeks in. She looks in the door. I really like the second or third time it happened after he looked out into the hallway and the doors closed again. And he describes that space to be exactly the width of a young girl's face. And it's odd. It's kind of creepy. You just have this young girl just kind of peeking in on you, but not really doing anything menacing or ominous. In fact, he describes that, it looks like she might even need help. She's not there when he looks. She only pops up when the doors start to close. It's creepy, but at the same time, it's innocent, which is, it's a nice touch. It's a little bit different from the sort of, mischievous, spooky little girls that we often see. Let's continue and see what happens next. The next time I passed the front desk, I asked the old man if he'd seen a young girl running through. "Heard the stories, then," he said between throat clearings, rocking gently in his seat. "Young Maddie has been here a long time. Takes a liking to young gentlemen guests. Always been shy. Never says a word. Not a word. Just curious." For some reason, I keep trying to do, like, a New England voice. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's cold out today, eh? But I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, Iker Falls is in West Virginia. So, I don't know if you could hear that accent, but just ignore it, because it is wrong. Anyways, I told him I hadn't heard any stories, and that there had been a girl taking the stairs and standing in front of my elevator on every floor. "That's our Maddie," he said. "She likes you then. Sweet on you. She just wants to see, that's all. Just to see. All she ever does. Curious little thing." Oh, that's the name of the story. Oh. Curious little thing. Just wants to see. So that's our brief explanation of what our little mysterious girl is. She is named Maddie, young Maddie, and all she likes to do is look at people. She's curious, as the title implies. She's just curious about what people are doing, particularly men. Just a shy little girl, doesn't say anything, doesn't do anything except for look at you as the doors are closing. Especially if she likes you, which again is creepy, but it's also, she hasn't done anything malevolent, and she apparently never does. So you just have to deal with this little girl peeking at you every time you close the door. It's weird, it's creepy, but like I said, it's not malevolent, so you don't feel too threatened by it. And I am curious, just like our Maddie, about why she was so interested in our narrator, but it's okay that we don't know that. It's just something I'm curious about. I would like to know, is it because he's out of town, perhaps? It's one of those things where you could fill in the blanks, and that kind of makes it better, I think. Anyway, I stayed at the Hotel Umbra for 3 nights. It was a 4-night business trip. The last night I tried sleeping in my car. It didn't help. Let me tell you about young Maddie. You only catch glimpses of her, a face with a resigned look of quiet desperation, dominated by a pair of wide, dark eyes. Locked doors, barricades, nothing made a difference. She gets inside. I never saw her longer than half a second. Every time I laid eyes on her, she retreated instantly, only to appear again an hour or two later. An hour or two, if I was lucky. The idea of only seeing her for like a half a second, it makes me think of like catching something out of the side of your eye, and out of your peripheral vision, except it's not in your peripheral, it's directly in front of you, which is it gives me a chill a little bit, just kind of thinking it that way. I like that. I don't know if that was the intent. It probably wasn't the intended effect, but that's what it makes me think of. The catching something out of the corner of your eye is like a horror staple, and having that happen right in front of you, and you see what it is, and it's still just there and gone like that. I snapped my finger, and I didn't want to peek the mic, so I snapped my finger just so you know, like that. Anyways, yeah, it's that conjures a cool image in my head. Might not have been intentional, but that's it doesn't always have to be intentional, right? Anyways, let me tell you about where I saw young Maddie. Every time I shut the door to my bathroom in my hotel room, I saw her. If I watched as I shut it, at the last possible second, I'd see the crescent of her face moving past the gap. I'd throw the door open to find nothing. Every time I closed the closet door, I saw her. If I watched that gap, she'd suddenly be inside the closet, leaning her head to watch me just as it shut. It's as if she knew where to go, where to be, so that my eye would meet hers. But there was never an impact, never a moment where she made contact with the door or the wall. The first time I sat at the writing table, I saw her. As I closed the large bottom drawer, she rushed at the gap from inside the drawer, her wide eyes pleading for something I could not give. I pulled the drawer from its rails and threw it on the floor. That's an interesting one, isn't it? It's bad enough that, she's in your room peeking at, the crack in the door of your bathroom, or inside the closet as you close it. Obviously the closet is a pretty classic horror location for spooks and creeps and monsters, but to have it to where she just kind of appears in there and isn't really in there when you open the door is quite interesting. But then you have her inside the drawer. Obviously the drawer isn't that big to where it could fit an actual real solid human 13-year-old girl. So the fact that you're sitting there and you close your drawer and you see this face of a 13-year-old girl looking out at you like she's in some kind of distress. Whew, yeah, that's an interesting one. And we see that the rules are they're pretty stretched for Maddie. She can just kind of appear anywhere, which kind of takes the horror up to another step, because it's not just doors, is it? It's other things that she could appear in. Let's continue. I did spend that last night in my car, but like I said, it did no good. Tossing and turning on that rental car seat, the back ratcheted as flat as I could get it. I'd have to open my eyes sometimes, and if there was a place for her to dart from my view when I opened them, she did. In the side view mirror, or peeking over the hood of my car, once upside down at the top of the windshield, as if she was on the roof. That makes me think of, like, I mean, it's bad enough that you have to sleep in your car. That's not a comfy place. But the whole, like, he keeps having to wake up to this little girl looking at him, and it's outside, and she just, ducks away every time he opens his eyes, which, again, it's just weird and it's uncomfortable. It isn't, now it's not the result of, like, something he's actively doing, like closing the door. It's just the act of him opening and closing his eyes as he goes in and out of sleep, and she just, keeps ducking down by the car like she's playing peekaboo. Again, it's just, we see that Maddie, privacy is not an issue for her curiosity. Yeah, let's continue and see where this goes. We're almost done here. I think we might finish it out. I'm back in St. Paul again, and I've been back for a year. But Maddie hasn't stopped. If I keep my eyes open long enough, if I watch a place long enough, I'll eventually catch sight of movement. Near the copier in my office, a pile of boxes in an alley, a column in a quiet parking lot, and my eye will get there just in time to see her retreating from view. There's never anything there when I go to look, so I've stopped looking. That's how I've had to change things since the Hotel Umbra. I've stopped looking. I keep my eyes shut when I close doors. When I shut drawers and cabinets, fridges, coolers, the trunk of my car. Not all spaces, just ones that are big enough. At least, that used to work. I was getting ready for bed a few nights ago, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, doors shut, cabinets shut, watching myself floss. I opened up wide to get my molars. I swear, I saw fingertips retreat down the back of my throat. Yeah, that's why I wanted to read this one. I love that punch. So we already know that Maddie isn't super picky about where she pops up, but at least it was somewhat bigger spaces. Even the drawer was a little bit bigger. It was like the big bottom desk drawer, But she's inside his throat. She's peeking out from his throat behind his teeth. That's terrifying. It's so creepy. And she's not doing anything, but just, there's the ghost of a 13-year-old girl who is inside of you. Just for her, whatever this is, her mechanic, to use like gaming terms or whatever, her mechanic is that she only pops up when things are closing. And, it's... You assume doors, you assume cabinets, but you never think it's going to be a part of my body. And then imagine everything else. His eyes. Imagine that he blinks his eyes and he sees her right before they close in his eyes. Like if he's looking in the mirror and you blink and you, real quick before your eyes shut, you see a little face peek. I mean, it's such an ominous and menacing thought. Even though she apparently poses no threat, she hasn't done anything to him aside from freak him out, and apparently she's never done anything to anyone as far as we know, but she's peering inside of him. And yeah, that's just, it's so weird and it's unique as far as like ghost stories go. You know, usually ghosts don't just kind of, it isn't, a sort of classic haunting, where she, makes a bunch of noise and pops up and very animated. This is, she's just gonna, hide in your throat and give you a little wave. Just because she's curious, she's just curious. It's, I'm gushing a little bit because I like that so much. Obviously, I like the story. I don't think I had too many criticisms and critiques of it. I like the story. Hopefully that's not too boring to listen to, but, we want to cover some good ones in here. I think I've mostly covered good ones from the start, give or take. And as we get into ones that I haven't read, which will be soonish, we'll probably get a more mix. But yeah, it's just, I like the story. I love that last punch. I know that was kind of used in a movie at some point. I want to say The Possession, something like that. I think it was the one that was based on the Dybbuk box story. I don't remember. I never saw it. I just remember the commercial had the little girl who was supposed to be possessed, like, she shines a flashlight down her throat and looks in the mirror, and you see fingers go down her throat. That came out, if I remember, a few years after this, and I don't think, or I don't know at least if they stole it or not stole or whatever, if they kind of took that idea from this, if someone happened to notice it online. I don't know. But it's just interesting that, the story comes out in a few years later. That same, kind of scare is used in a major motion picture. But I mean, at some point everybody's going to have the same idea as somebody else, and they might not know it. I don't know, at that time in 2009, if there were a ton of, like, Hollywood writers looking up creepypasta, obviously now they're very into it. For stuff like Candle Cove, which I actually haven't finished watching Channel Zero yet at the time of this recording, and that aired a year ago, about which goes to show you what I thought of it. Maybe by the time we cover Candle Cove, I will have watched the second half of it. I only watched the first 3 episodes, so I can actually talk about it. But yeah, that made me angry. But anyways, this isn't about Candle Cove. This is about Curious Little Thing, which I obviously am very fond of. I like the scare. I like that it's not subtle, but like I said, it's not threatening. She didn't do anything. She didn't tear up the inside of his throat or anything like that. She's just peeking, and that doesn't really help, does it? That, it doesn't really make you feel better. So yeah, now we know why our narrator does not like to look at anything while it's closing, because he doesn't want to see like anything like that again. And I don't really blame him. I think that's about all I can say about this. Like I said, I like it, obviously, and I don't need to keep gushing about it and repeating myself. Didn't really have too many comments or critiques on it. It's just kind of short and sweet with a good punch. And I don't need to keep talking bad about Channel Zero, Candle Cove, because that's not what this is. And we'll see how No Hendouse goes. So, yeah, I think we can about wrap this one up. It was a kind of a quick and breezy one, I feel like. Although, looking at the time, we're well over 20, 25 minutes. So I guess I just kind of talked and read for a while. But yeah, I think that's going to be about it for Curious Little Thing. There's not too much more I can say on it that isn't repeating myself. So yeah, well, I think we can wrap it up here. Like, subscribe, comments, all that stuff that YouTubers like to ask. But I want to just have some fun here. Let's get more people in on it. So just all that jazz. If you think somebody's interested, go ahead and throw them a link, and maybe I'll have somebody talk to, about my terrible voice or whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for a curious little thing in this episode of the Haunt Collection. We'll go ahead and slide that one back up on the digital shelf, and we'll see you next time. Later.